جمهورية قبرص وهي ثالث أكبر جزيرة من حيث المساحة بغرب آسيا في منطقة شرق البحر الأبيض المتوسط. العلاقات المصرية القبرصية تشير إلى العلاقات الثنائية بين قبرص ومصر، والتي تأسست فور إعلان قبرص استقلالها عام 1960. مصر تستخدم قبرص كجسر للصادرات إلى أوروبا، فهناك العديد من أوجه التعاون بين البلدين في العديد من المجالات. جزيرة قبرص تعد من قائمة الأماكن السياحية التي تستحق الزيارة. تعد نيقوسيا عاصمة كل من شمال وجنوب جزيرة قبرص، ومقر الحكومة في جزيرة قبرص تقع المدينة أقصى الجنوب الشرقي لجميع عواصم الدول الأعضاء في الاتحاد الأوروبي.
Welcome, Excellency, to our program. It's a pleasure to have you with us in our program Bridges today.
Thank you very much for the invitation.
Excellency, we have a great relation between Egypt and Cyprus. We have also a common historical background between the two countries. So first of all, we want to shed light on our bilateral relations.
Indeed, due to the proximity, Cyprus and Egypt are only 540 kilometers apart. We are all blessed to be on the Mediterranean, in the Eastern Mediterranean region. And indeed, our histories go back to millennia. There are written reports of the pharaohs communicating with in tablets of the time with the kings in Cyprus. And our histories were intertwined throughout the ages.
So, Excellency, we have a great relation between both countries, and can we say it's reflected through our art between Cyprus and Egypt?
Well, I think you can see from the house that many pieces that we have are similar. And from the Greco-Roman times to the Pharaonic times, there were always interchanges, intercultural relations. Cleopatra was your queen, but she was also our queen. Because under the Ptolemies, Egypt and also Cyprus were part of the same kingdom. So there were many times in our histories where we shared rulers, we shared common histories. And even in recent times, modern history of both Egypt and Cyprus, again we find a lot of relations. We shouldn't forget that the modern relations of our two countries were based on the friendly relations between Nasser and Makarios, who were both in the non-aligned movement, and both brought their countries a lot of pride and a lot of national pride.
We have also a summit between the two countries, or the three countries, Greece and Cyprus and Egypt. We want to know more about the most outcoming points out of the discussions.
In the last years, we had 9 summits, trilateral summits, between Egypt, Cyprus and Greece. The last one was in Athens, and the next one will be in Egypt, because we rotate between capitals. So it should be in Egypt sometime after COP27, which has to be, and we're sure that will be a very successful international summit. And after that, again, our leaders will be meeting in Egypt to discuss further how to promote relations. You spoke about milestones of this relation are many. They started more in political and energy cooperation, but it has expanded in a lot of fields, all the way to culture, to common weeks of culture, and also in the last 2 or 3 years, our diaspora youths were meeting in different capitals, and also in different centers of diaspora, like America, Australia, where the ministers of diaspora of our 3 countries were meeting together with the youths represented in those countries and promoted a better understanding between our peoples. As you know, both Greeks and Cypriots, thousands of them were living happily in Egypt in the 19th, 20th century. They helped Egypt in many areas where they were employed, like in even building the Suez Canal.
Yeah.
And what we can see is that these friendships were never forgotten. They started from millennia, as we mentioned before, but even in the recent histories of our countries, we see that the interchanges were many, and especially among the people. It was easier to go from Alexandria to Limassol by boat. There were nearly daily boats traveling back and forth, bringing people, ideas, and goods.
جزيرة قبرص قسمت عام 1974 إلى جزئين، الأول ذو أغلبية سكانية يونانية والثاني ذو أغلبية تركية. على مقربة من المطار الرئيسي لمدينة لارنكا توجد البحيرة المالحة التي تعد موطنا لحوالي 80 نوعا من الطيور المهاجرة وأشهرها الفلامينجو الوردي. ويتربع على شاطئ البحيرة المالحة أيضا أهم المزارات وهو مسجد أم حرام. تقتز جبال ترودوس الواقعة في منطقة التل في الجنوب الغربي بالعديد من القرى الجميلة التي تمتلئ بالمنازل التقليدية الحجرية والأزقة المرصوفة بالحصى.
Excellency, can we talk about our bilateral relations? And we have a great historical background between Cyprus and Egypt.
Well, as you can see today, I'm wearing a pin. This is the EMGF, East Mediterranean Gas Forum. When we talk about trilateral cooperation, this was an idea that emerged from these summits, where the creation of the East Mediterranean Gas Forum was to bring all the countries of the region to cooperate in better ways to exploit natural gas. We had already the last 2 days the 7th ministerial meeting of the East Mediterranean Gas Forum, where also the president of the commission was present, together with the Commissioner of Energy of the European Union, and an agreement was signed between the European Union and Egypt. And all this was made possible from ideas that emerged from this trilateral cooperation. I would say the East Mediterranean Gas Forum is maybe the most tangible result of this excellent trilateral cooperation. And if we go to the bilateral side, last year in September, there was a meeting of government to government between our presidents and nearly half the ministerial councils of the countries. And all of them together sat and discussed more ways to promote relations between our two countries, not only in energy, not only in environment, but also in areas like culture, education, recognition of diplomas, and creation of bilateral cultural weeks, exchange of business forums. Already we had in March a business forum, the first one after COVID in Cairo, where the ministers of trade of both countries were present. There were very fruitful outcomes from that business forum, and it will be repeated in September in Cyprus. So I would say that these two, the first government-to-government meeting, summit, and the first, the creation of the East Mediterranean Gas Forum, I think these are the most tangible results of this relationship, but they're not the only ones. There's just too many areas to really discuss over a short interview.
You had already since 2 or 3 weeks ago a visit from your Ministry of Foreign Affairs here to Egypt. The most important discussions and outcomes of this visit?
Well, the most important element of the visit was to prepare exactly the next trilateral summit, as well as the next government-to-government summit that will take place in Cyprus in late fall of this year. I just wanted to add a parenthesis about our minister. Mr. Kassoulidis was maybe the first foreign minister of a European country that visited Cairo after the change of government and the assumption of the government by His Excellency President Al-Sisi. And he came here to convey the support of Cyprus. And this is where the foundation of the ideas of this bilateral, trilateral cooperation began, with the results that we know today of 10 trilateral summits taking place, a lot of bilateral visits. Our foreign ministers exchange visits at least twice a year. At least 4 times a year, our Minister of Energy is visiting Cairo or vice versa because of the East Mediterranean Gas Forum that I mentioned before. Our Ministers of Defense equally, they're meeting on trilateral meetings, formations, and bilateral, again, once or twice a year. So the amount of acquis generated from this relationship is enormous. And I would also like to mention that we're hoping in the coming days to have also a trilateral summit for defense and for other areas to follow in the future.
The ministry visited also as a museum of civilization. I think he was very impressed about the monuments there and the masterpieces we have inside this museum.
I think this museum is maybe one of the most successful ones, and being one of the latest museums that you have here, I think for visitors, for VIPs, is the ideal museum, because in a short time you go through the whole history of the 7 millennia or 9 millennia. If we start with the skeleton, it's 35,000 years. And then you see the mummies. I was privileged to be present during the parade of the royal mummies, to receive them there at the museum. So for me, that museum will remain always the best museum to visit. And my only regret, because I'm finishing my mandate now in August, is that I won't be present for the opening of the new Egyptian Grand Museum. But I hope that I will come back and visit it
hope so.
when it's opened.
Excellency, you will dedicate some books to the Bibliotheca Alexandrina. I think it's a good opportunity to know more about Cypriot civilization, and to the Egyptian people will know more about this culture.
Yes, it was an idea that originated from our Department of Cultural Promotion in the Foreign Ministry. And the idea is to donate approximately 150 volumes of books concerning the culture and history of Cyprus, which were published by 2 very important institutions in Cyprus. One is the banking cultural institution, and the other one is the Cyprus Research Institute. So these books will be donated in the next coming days to the Bibliotheca Alexandrina, which I think is also one of the jewels of modern Egypt today. And I would never be impressed visiting it again and again.
I think we had a great number of Cypriot people in Alexandria since several years ago, but they are still related to Alexandria, especially with the Greek people, and they had a very large civilization during thousands of years, and we have common relation dating back to our history. I think you were talking about the community. It was a large number, and now it's there are few.
That's correct, because we had at times approximately 80,000 Cypriots living in Egypt when the population was not even 400,000. So if we just make the division, 1 out of 5 Cypriots was living at some time in Alexandria. Even from my own staff in the embassy, one diplomat, his grandmother was married in Cairo. The other one, his grandmother was living in Alexandria. And I will not talk about the local staff that are all from Cypriot and Greek families who intermarried here in Egypt, and they're maybe the 3rd or the 4th generation. And Alexandria especially was the hub of the foreigners in Egypt. And our associations actually, which are still active today, are now reaching 150 years of their foundation. So they were one of the first charitable organizations that were formed in Egypt, and we're very proud of both of them and of our other nationalities who lived for many years and contributed to what Egypt is today.
Excellency, we have some similarities between Cypriot people and the Egyptian people, habits, type of foods. I think it's musaqqa. I think you have the same one.
Well, I will
musaqqa, it's called musaqqa, right?
I will mention 3 words, patiha or patih, bamya, and halum or halim,
halumi, okay.
The cheese. And there's a lot of words in the fish, in the food that we eat that are the same. The recipes are the same. So believe me if I tell you that when I'm here, I feel I'm at home. And we should never forget that this distance of 500 kilometers is nothing. And it's not only nothing today because of flying, but even throughout the millennia, when we started traveling by boat, we went across.
Yes.
So when the Egyptians left, they came to Cyprus. Cyprus had a few more options. They could go maybe to Lebanon and to Cyprus and towards Greece. But these relations over the many years are very important and very deeply rooted, even in the customs and in the way we think.
Customs.
And I have served already in Lebanon. I've served now in Egypt for 2.5 years. And I am discovering that getting to know our neighborhood was one of my most gratifying experiences as a diplomat.
Oh, you enjoyed it?
Of course.
قبرص تزخر بعبق من التاريخ والحضارة المتنوعة، بدءا باسمها الذي اكتسبته من الكلمة الإغريقية، وصولا إلى طقسها المتوسطي الذي يجعلها مدينة تستحق الزيارة طوال العام، كما أن شعبها يتميز بحسن الضيافة والوجه البشوش، ويتقن 3 لغات هي اليونانية والتركية والإنجليزية.
Excellency, you visited many places in Egypt. Which place was the most impressive place for you?
I think, even though it's a cliche, for any foreigner visiting Egypt, are the pyramids.
The pyramids.
Because it's just incredible to see buildings of such immense structures of how many, 3-4 millennia that are still there. I served in Mexico, so I've seen a lot of pyramids also in Mexico, in some other countries, but seeing the pyramids here and all the other colossal buildings like in Aswan, it's just impressive for us. We are expecting soon that we'll be receiving our first copy of an obelisk that the Minister of Culture will donate, and the Egyptian government, to Cyprus. So I'm looking forward to the day where it will be also placed in an important location in Nicosia. But even in our museum, and I'm sure once you are in Cyprus, in our National Museum, a large part of the collections in the museum are of Egyptian origin because of the closeness of the relations and of the histories of the two peoples.
Do you have similar gods during the Cypriot civilization, like the Greek gods, and there were similarities between the Egyptian and the Greek gods?
Egyptian gods, you had more imagination because they were more zoomorphic than our gods that were more like me and you. And but when you think that the cradle of civilization was the Middle East, where the first communities of people were founded, the first cities, it's obvious that between us in this very small geographical corner of the world, where most of these civilizations emerged, that there would be a lot of similarities, and they are, and also between the major basic religions of today. Again, there is a lot of interchanges and commonalities in all the three basic religions of the world.
What would you like, Excellency, to tell the people in Cyprus about Egypt in a phrase?
Visit Egypt, because Egypt combines not only culture and history of millennia, but also people with the same warmth of heart and hospitality as the Cypriot people themselves. And every ambassador would like to see that there is an increase of exchanges of visits between the governments, which we're doing very well, but also between the people. And visiting Egypt for all Cypriots would be a great awakening, and they will discover also the places where many of their family used to live in the last 2 centuries.
Thank you, Excellency, for your time, and it was a pleasure to have you with us in Bridges today.
Thank you very much for this opportunity. The pleasure was all mine. Thank you.